Okay, welcome everyone. This is Cursillo School of Leaders for February 2023 in the Archdiocese of Washington. And our speaker tonight is Ginger Caldwell, and she is talking to us about the Cursillo weekend, Friday, part 2, Encountering Self, including the talks of layperson, piety, palanca, and reconciliation. So Ginger, welcome. Thank you. Take it away.
I will, and welcome to Friday, part 2. Sounds like a good title for a scary movie to me. I want us to begin again, blessing ourselves as we like to do always. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. When we bless ourselves, we make the sign of the cross. We're identifying ourselves as Christ's own. This is what the first day of our 3-day weekend is all about. The realization that if you actually wake up to your need to embrace the Christian ideal in your life, then the power of God's friendship blooms forth in your life habitually and actually and in faith. Last month, you heard about some of Friday's Rollos, the ideal Rollo, the habitual grace, actual grace, and a little bit about palanca. Jimmy summed up what it is to be in a relationship of friendship and love with Jesus, which is at the center of Cursillo's understanding of the Christian ideal, with the following quote from Pedro Arrupe. It bears repeating. Nothing is more practical than finding God. That is, than in falling in love in quite an absolute and final way. What you are in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what you will get out of bed in the morning, what you will do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, for instance, the Bible, so who you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything. The first full day of our 3-day weekend is all about the encounter with self and getting the candidates to embrace the ideal of falling in love and being in friendship with God. Or as it was in my case, I'd call it a great awakening. If one does that, then the combination of habitual and actual grace will lead the candidate to developing a habitual way of living and praying that will mold their character and solidify their destiny. And in doing so, we accomplish the Cursillo aim of making more saints present on Judgment Day. This evening, we'll explore the other half of the Rollos and the experiences on Friday, which include the layperson in the church and the piety Rollos. And we'll talk about confession or reconciliation and about palanca. The first Rollo of the afternoon, the layperson in the church, comes right after lunch. Whoever gives this Rollo has to have a raised level of excitement, both personally and for the subject of the talk, because it's right after lunch. And as many of you probably remember, it's a dreaded time to give a talk. Your listeners either want to continue talking with their new friends from the communion they shared at lunch, or else all they want to do is take a nap. In my experience, anyone giving this Rollo has to do something to energize the candidates because our message is important and it's not to be missed or slept through. I gave this Rollo one of the teams I worked, and I was blessed to have Ginny Novak as a musician. I had asked her to do something, and so when I came in the room, she had all the candidates standing up and singing This Little Light of Mine and doing it in rounds. Everybody was awake. So I have a question for you. Does anyone remember the layperson in the church talk that was given on your weekend? If you do want to share, you have to unmute yourself. I'm not surprised.
I was gonna say, I don't really remember the one on my weekend, but I do remember the one on a weekend that I teamed, and I think you gave it, Ginger.
Really? Yay. It's
Yeah.
because Ginny woke you up. Probably. Well, our poor memories aside, it's not the fault of the Royista who gave the layperson on the weekend, but it points out the importance of remembering to bring excitement into how we deliver the talk. And at this point, we have to understand where the candidates are. They're beginning to feel a little tug that maybe they're changing, or that this might be something new and uncomfortable for them. This Rollo points to the importance of communicating the good news to others and our responsibility, the responsibility we have as members of a communion of souls who are the church, not the building. The people are the church. The importance of lay people in the church is of sharing the faith that is central to the Cursillo message of the Rollo. But actually doing that sharing is something that calls us out of our comfort zones. And most probably, we have that Rollo has that effect on the candidates. It suggests a responsibility. I suspect, in looking at this, it occurred to me that this might be why we have such a problem with sponsorship, that idea of responsibility. Or perhaps it's why sponsorship, good sponsorship, is so important. The Leader's Manual tells us that there are 3 parts to the proclamation of the gospel message. Embracing the Christian ideal is the first, openness to God's grace is the second, and the understanding that one cannot live the good news of the gospel and the ideal of grace that it proclaims in isolation. It must be lived in community. Excuse me. My mouth gets so dry when I'm talking. I remember the first time I gave an RCIA talk, I was so nervous. It was before Cursillo, and I was doing this like every 2 minutes. Jimmy told me afterward it was the worst thing I could have done. Anyway, our very understanding of God is that our one God is 3 divine persons. We all know that. Our living God is a living relationship between 3 persons. And the good news of the Gospels is that we are invited into a friendship with God that is lived in relationship with those people he brings into our lives. Our mission as laypersons, enlivened by the proclamation of the good news, is to work in a communal union with others, both clerical and lay folks, to make more souls present on Judgment Day. In the older iterations of the Leader's Manual, it tells us that this Rollo is not designed to be a personal witness Rollo, but instead it's to provide a communal witness that will illustrate the power of God's grace and what happens when a communion of souls, empowered by the Holy Spirit, proclaim the good news in a loving manner. For instance, if I were giving this Rollo today, my communal witness might be about our parish building over 500 homes in Nicaragua over the last several years. We would have a group every year visit the families we were building homes for and have the homes blessed. Our parish continues to do this, though we aren't doing visits to Nicaragua, despite the persecution of the church, which is now rampant there, where the bishop and a number of priests have been imprisoned, along with many lay people. And all because that state government sees the church community as an enemy. It sees it as a threat. Or I might share how after the murder of George Floyd and others in 2020, a number of our parishioners at St. John Vianney gathered, despite the impact of the pandemic, and formed a racial justice ministry. That ministry has been instrumental in raising the consciousness level of our fellow parishioners to racial justice concerns related to systemic racism in our society, our government, and in our church. We had Cardinal Gregory come speak with us in our parish about his experience as a Black Catholic last year. And we're excited, really excited to have later this month, Monsignor East celebrate Mass with our parish community and speak to us about his experiences as a Black Catholic and Black priest. Anybody here have a communal witness they would like to share with us? Something current in their lives?
This is the community, I guess, of my workplace, but I am one of 8 people on the pastoral ministry staff for Oak Crest Senior Living Community. And we decided last year to do this, but to do it last year, we decided to do it this year. And that is that we are creating 1 television program a week for the 4 weeks of February, exploring the religious history of the African American community in our particular religious traditions. So I did the African American Black Catholic experience. A colleague did that for the Protestant community. Our manager did it for the Jewish community. And the 4th week is going to be a dialogue among the 3 traditions about how we personally have been impacted by people of color and how that has impacted our own spiritual journey. So I'm really proud of that. We have very few African Americans at Oak Crest, but many on staff. And so we decided we were going to do this as a witness and as a, just to celebrate the fact that there is diversity in our faith traditions. So
that sounds fascinating.
Thank you. And I had Monsignor East and Donna Grimes come, and I interviewed them to talk about the Black Catholic experience.
I bet that was good.
It was wonderful.
In my parish in St. Michael's in Silver Spring, and I'm very delighted with the charismatic group in Spanish-speaking community. We have many years in Radio America. We have different programs, and there are 2 that I particularly like. One that I listen to with my husband at 10 a.m. that is called From Blessing to Blessing. And then at 2 o'clock, how you call it? Different themes of the woman. The subject is the woman. So anything that had to do with the woman life is discussed, is a lot of encouragement. It's a very well managed, and it's the only one in the Diocese of Washington, D.C. in Spanish for that long, for many years.
One of the things that our parish did when everything closed down is that starting in about May of 2020 and continuing through the early part of December, we had Mass outside. We face a major thoroughfare and we have a long run up to it. People brought lawn chairs. We had lots of families come. They were arrayed around the church, and you could sit in your car or you could sit on the lawn. And we had a good speaker set. We had keyboard out on the steps of the church. We had cantor. We had the full music and everything. And it was something of a witness to the neighborhood that the Catholic community was alive and well and worshiping through all of that period of time.
Wished I had belonged to your parish at that time. We weren't doing that at St. John Vianney. We were struggling.
Yeah. And with the formation, charismatic group, the formation, I had it for 4 years. A very serious formation from relating not only the theology aspect of it, actually that it was touched but the practical ways of being a Catholic, it was very enriching and really, really good to move people to ministries and so on.
Why do you think giving a communal witness is important for the candidates to get an understanding of their role as a layperson in the church? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
They can see that it can happen, that maybe their parish haven't done it, but there are creative ways to do things. There are formality to different programs, different things that people that are in the pew can participate in.
Yep.
And evangelization opportunities.
When I thought about, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sue.
So I'll pop in with my catechism in a year's study. And the life of the church is in revelation and in tradition. And the tradition is what the living church is and does throughout its life and its understanding. And this talk is situated between habitual grace and actual grace. And I had the worst time trying to figure out why. And then it dawned on me that habitual grace, we talk about God's continuing invitation to us. And it is in that community of believers in which that invitation is grown and broadcast. And oh, by the way, we are part of broadcasting that as our role in the church, as the laity going out to the world.
You get the feeling that God was, and the Holy Spirit was working in Eduardo Bonin when he laid out the method. It also occurred to me that it being a communal witness, it is less intimidating for the candidates as they're learning what they may want to become and do, as they don't have to do it alone. So we're in this Rollo, we're telling the candidates that they have a mission. Their mission is to live the Christian ideal and thereby to personify Christ in all the circumstances of their lives. In everywhere they find themselves, every day, at home, at work, at the Giant, at Wawa. The good news of the gospel doesn't call people to be pew potatoes. It calls us to action, which of course is another day's talk. It calls us to enter into a vibrant friendship with God, empowered by grace and lived in active ways with others, helping both them and us to be among the saints God will welcome when our life here on earth is over. To give you an example of the mission we have as layperson in the church, and I'm stretching this a little, my former pastor, you all know, Father Daly, spoke with a group of us one Sunday about mission. It had to do with the gospel that day he was talking to us about. Now, he's not exactly a layperson, but certainly in his new role as a retired priest, he's almost like one. And I was taken by the fact that as a 70-something-year-old retired priest, he was still looking for mission, a new mission for this new period in his life. I thought he really did take that Rollo to heart. Anyone here have a current mission they wish to share? I know that can be an intimidating word, mission.
Well, I think we can all say that we're all commissioned at our baptism to, spread the gospel and to share the love of God with others. And certainly, what is our motto in Cursillo?
Make a friend, be a friend, and bring that friend to Christ. So each and every one of us should have popped up and said that, shouldn't we have, Kathy?
Obvious.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Willie.
Thank you for that. I was just thinking about today while you were saying that I had an opportunity to go out and visit seniors that are shut in and can't go anywhere and in wheelchairs, and to be able to visit with them and say a prayer with them and just kind of bless them. You know, they was so happy to see us, you know, 4 of the guys from our most ministry, and, you know, take the time to go to Virginia and visit them and sit with them and know that one day I'll be in that same position, you know. But it was just the fact of be able to give back while you can, you know, and it was really rewarding just to see how happy they were to see us, and then almost wanted to follow us out of the building, you know. So it was really nice. So thanks for letting me share that.
Anyone else?
I have a mission. I want to be more like Blessed Mother, their virtues, and trying to get closer, deeper, and I have been throughout the pandemic with the sodality group of my parish. On Saturdays, praying the rosary, putting intentions and so on in mass and events. And I'm looking forward to join them as well. And it's like each time that I want to do more, I see how far I am. You know, it's like, you know, we need some more, you know. Blessed Mother cannot be no or never, you know, and be very attached to her. And I love her, and she has been in my life all the life. I have been doing, you know, masses for her and coordinating for years at the Basilica and things like that. But it's like, you need to really get there, you know, where she wants you to be. So that's my mission for this year. We'll see.
So I would say my mission is to leave anybody who I've come in contact with one way or the other, to leave them better than how I met them. I want to be able to affect their lives in a way where afterwards it's going to be a difference between when I met them and when they leave. And God has blessed me with that opportunity a lot at work, and with just a lot of friends, people I meet from different religions or in the community as well, and as church and also. So it is amazing. And that is something I did a whole lot more when I was at Home Depot full-time, because it is enriching. It is enriching. But I still do it there. When I'm there, I still do it for years. So let me be a blessing to you, to anybody, everybody, and then continue to encourage you and pursue whatever it is, you know, that person, wherever the path is, whether it's just listening to them or just praying with them or just giving them thoughts or whatever it is. So that's help me, God.
I suspect all of us here have a mission. We just have to sometimes stop and think and recognize it as a mission and give it the due it deserves. The Rollo following layperson in the church is the actual grace that ends with the distribution of Palanca. As we all remember, Palanca is the loving action of individual Cursillistas acting in a communal way as a product of actual grace at work in them. I don't know about you guys, but for me, receiving and reading Palanca on the weekend was overwhelming. To realize that so many people who didn't know me and I didn't know, people not only from the Washington Archdiocese, but even people from around the world were praying for me that weekend. Just blew me away. Yes. I think this is truly where my faith went from my head to my heart. Mm-hmm. The final Rollo of the afternoon, following everyone being brought back after their break to read their Palanca, is the Piety Rollo. When I made my weekend, this talk was called the Holiness Talk. It got changed back to being called the Piety Rollo because piety is all about what we do in response to the action of grace in us, while the fruit of our piety is what we do in response to grace, is holiness. Again, when giving the piety Rollo, it's important that the Rolloista be aware that the candidates are most probably feeling quite emotional at this point in the day, especially after receiving their palanca. Piety is a key talk for the weekend, for it sums up the main message of the first day. It presents the first basic step toward being an apostle, which is nothing less than stepping out with a deliberate sense of purpose, which is an ideal, to embrace the mission of becoming a saint and bringing others along with them. If you remember, the piety Rollo is the first leg of the tripod, that is the Cursillo method, and prepares the way for the Rollos on Saturday. Piety Rollo introduces the candidates to the method, which will provide them the means by which they become a saint. The person who gives this talk, through their witness, can show by her own life that the message, the good news of the gospel, is not merely a theory, but it is a very lived experience. It's a lived experience that is accessible through the grace of God, whose friendship brings with it a holiness of purpose that can lift up not only oneself, but the others with whom it is shared. Piety is the life of grace, conscious, growing, and shared with love. This talk is leading the candidates to a point where they can come to grips with the call for a deeper relationship with God, which is presented to them the next day. Now, our first day of the weekend ends with reconciliation. Most people don't like the idea of confessing their sins. Out of a guilt or a sense of embarrassment, many have refused to go to confession, sometimes for years on end. For some of the candidates, this may be their first time in a long time they've been confronted with an opportunity to confess their sins. That was the case for me. And that experience, my first face-to-face confession, was life-altering. It gave me a whole new understanding and appreciation for this wonderful sacrament. It's important here that as the team presents this opportunity to the candidates, that they do so in a loving way that does not pressure them to do something they don't want to do. That isn't Cursillo. This day has painted a picture for the candidates, their personal mission, and a need to embrace the Christian ideal. It has drawn for them an understanding of the way the Christian ideal may be lived in friendship and communion that is empowered in a grace-filled way in the church. Their role in the church and the freeing nature of communion it brings with it all points to the freeing action of God's grace, which is ratified by their yes to that grace in the confessional. And the candidates' use of sacramental confession frees them from sin and lifts them into a fuller, realized friendship with God. So I ask you, the first day of our Cursillo weekend starts with the meditation, whose aim is to put before the candidates 3 ways to see Christ, 3 glances of Christ. It progresses to the ideal Rollo, followed by habitual grace, layperson in the church, actual grace, palanca, and finally piety and reconciliation. What do you think is the common thread that flows through this first day of the Cursillo weekend's activities?
Well, we're encountering self. That's one of the themes for the day.
Definitely.
Really?
We're also encountering people we don't know, but with time, we may share with them and we may not.
Relationship and encounter, embracing your relationship with God.
I think it's the assurance that is God love there for you.
I think it too gives a sense of perspective. Like sometimes we're the only ones who are going through a particular emotion, and in the weekend you encounter other people who have similar feelings to your own feelings and insecurities.
I think it's kind of a bridge day. We certainly began with Thursday night being charged to focus on where are you with God? Who are you? Just exactly where do you stand? And then we listened to a lot about God's love. Mm-hmm. And then we start building our means of encountering God's love and orienting our persons to that by the time we get to piety.
It encourages, just as you say, it encourages candidates to see where they are and then where they can go or how they can become.
I was going to say, Ginger, also, I think for me, it made me take a look at myself in other people. It made me see myself in the next person's story.
For me, it was like, here's Christ waiting for you. It was waiting for you. So here it is. You're in the right place.
It's a call to respond in a way that probably many of the candidates have never had before or experienced. So to sum up, Friday points to the understanding of the need to fully embrace in one's life the Christian ideal in the context of God's love for one as borne out by his action in us, around us, through both habitual and actual grace. God's invitation to us is borne out in that the good news of the gospel requires a response from us in the form of taking up our role as layperson in the church, thereby embracing a loving friendship with God and living in communion with others. That communion with others is lived out of the love of God and moves us to show our love for others, which is shown as we choose to live piously in prayer and communion and friendship with God and our neighbor. Hence the actualization of holiness in our lives, which is a lived piety. I'm going to end here with a quote from Mary Oliver, a poet I just love that Ginny Novak introduced me to. She says, "I tell you this to break your heart, by which I mean only that it break open and never close again to the rest of the world." And that to me is what a Cursillo weekend does for us. De Caloris.
Wonderful. De Caloris. Thank you. Thank you, Ginger. That was lovely. So now we kind of had some discussion all the way through, but is there anyone who has a question or a comment that you would like to share right now?
Or anything you particularly remember from the Friday of your weekend?
How many folks remember their palanca, receiving palanca? Yeah. Anybody want to share some stories about that?
Yes. I was crying from the beginning. I read the number 1 until the last one. For me, the Cursillo was palanca. For me, it was receiving God's love in such a way that I will never forget it again. And it was so meaningful because for me, it's like, okay, I have encountered Christ since I was very young. I have said yes in so many committed ways. And I'm pretty involved in the church. But here it is. I knew God was waiting for me at the beginning when I heard meditation and so on Thursday. And then the palanca. I was so much love. I didn't know I was loved so much. And by so, like you were saying, Ginger, by so many people. And I couldn't stop, as a matter of fact, I had so many. And then I was trying to make sure that before I leave, I had to read it all. I was like, I have to, I don't care if it's time to sleep, I will read a little more. And that was like very, very fulfilling. I always talk about palancas. I give palanca to people. It's very, very meaningful in my life. It was outstanding for me.
Wow.
For me, I was struck with the palanca. Like, when they came around with the bags, I just said, oh, they're giving out bags. But then when I saw my name was on the bag, my name was on all these cards. I mean, that just blew me away that I was literally called and remembered by name. It wasn't just like something.
To whom it may concern.
That just blew me away. It really did.
Well, for me, I wrote down while you were doing your talk, I wrote down not by oneself. And it always struck me that through my weekend and through Artrea and through Cursillo, I always am amazed at how we always are coming together. Not just one person, we're always in a group. We're always there for each other. We always, it's like when they formed the weekends and formed Cursillo, it was God's mission, and nothing was broke, and nothing was needed to be fixed, and nothing needs to be changed now. Just need to follow the path that's already been laid out before us. And so that kind of, for my weekend, when I saw those palancas, and like Phyllis said, my name was on it, I just could not believe that these people cared for me that much that they would sit down and write me a palanca and tell me all these wonderful things that I needed someone else to tell me that at the time I did not realize for myself. It was truly an awakening to hear what was possible and what you could accomplish and what you could do through believing in self, and also believing in others. So that was what kind of really stood out for me, was, not by oneself. It was all of us,
And the realization that you were being lifted up in prayer, that part of why you were experiencing the joy you were was all those prayers and actions, apostolic actions that were being done on your behalf.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I had a different approach. The palanca was nice and all that, and I appreciate that the strangers was writing to me, but I couldn't see why everybody was crying in the room. And what do I do now? Sue could attest to that. I was the thorn in her side, but she was
Joy.
over before that weekend started. I just couldn't understand why people was crying. I didn't break down until the cross ceremony.
I give you an example. I only cry when I'm very joyful and happy. I give you an example.
I'm sure I'm not the only one, but it really hit me the other day. I was asking our fellow at church that records the mass to be streamed about recording Monsignor East when he comes. And it's on a Saturday, and he usually does Sunday, and he's a young fellow that likes to go out at night, so he wasn't overly enthused by my asking. But he said, for you, Ginger, I will do it, because I remembered that note you wrote me, thanking me for what I was doing, and I had sent him a palanca without even thinking it was a palanca. But as we're talking, I realize, we can send palanca to anyone, and a little palanca goes a long way. I think we all know that.
I still need to thank you for the one that you sent me after I did my talk for you. And I still remember that it was very, very, I mean, encouraging and just unexpected, but very, it was just love. And it was all in the words that you wrote. So thank you for saying that.
Polanka is love.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like when I received Jeannie Novak, she was my sponsor, and when I read her note, I said, "Oh my Lord, Jeannie wrote something to," and I was so touched by it, you know. And she put the scripture and everything, and you cannot connect, you know, more that way. Yeah.
Did the confession reconciliation that Friday evening have any special effects on anybody here?
Yeah, I can share. That was a very key moment for me, was going to confession. That was just that was very emotional and very, you know, very much needed. It was kind of the turning point where where Jesus really became my friend. You know, somebody who I could talk to and relate to, but also Lord. He was also Lord because he could forgive my sins, but he was also a friend. And I remember the next day sitting underneath a tree and thinking, you know, because the night before was still so with me, and just realizing, kind of sitting under a tree, and it was still winter, but it was a little bit of a warm day, and just really thinking about the fact that Jesus was my friend. And now what did this mean in my life?
For me, it was I hadn't been in years, because part of it is I kind of just didn't get that every confession was I had a penance of a Hail Mary, Our Father, and Glory Be. And it was like, this is so rote. And that confession was not rote. And I've been to a couple other on Cursillo weekends, and certainly certain priests since, that make it such a real confession. But that was the first, Father John Vale, God rest his soul. Well, I'm done, Kathy.
Okay. Well, thank you all for sharing your stories, and thank you, Ginger, for leading us on this path through part 2 of Friday of the Weekend. I think this was a wonderful reminder of some of those very key moments on the Cursillo weekend. So thank you.